It's evening time here in Japan, but I guess it's morning time still for you, almost all of you in Europe, huh? It's wonderful to be back for this first 1 day full sitting of the year 2021. Uh, it's a joy and a pleasure to be back with you all. Thank you, Bernhard, and everyone for coming together and doing this together. Today I will speak about not a leg to stand on. Not a leg to stand on. This is a English expression which means something is without a basis or without a foundation. We don't have a leg to stand on. In a word, the point is we cannot truly practice from the standpoint of the self, the seeking self, the deluded self. It has no foundation. So we cannot truly practice from there because it is without a leg to stand on, without a foundation. What does this really mean? And how then do we truly practice? I trust you already see from your own experience that trying to practice from the supposed standpoint of the self, the wavering, unstable self, trying to practice from there, this is the difficulty of practice. This is the frustration of practice. In effect, it is the result of not truly practicing. But you must see it all the way through, because this difficulty, this frustration in the practice, the self cannot pull itself up by its own bootstraps, another common English expression. This difficulty, this frustration, it seems impossible. This is precisely the way through. Practicing properly, this is itself the way through. Practicing wrongly, if I may use that word, we all know the frustration, the difficulty, like a cat chasing its tail around and around and around. And then we say, oh, it's so difficult. No, it's not. But to practice properly, correctly, is essential here, or else we simply start from a place without a foundation, and you know where that leads. Nowhere fast. To practice in the wrong way, so to speak, means to prolong the suffering, the dis-ease, to exacerbate it. That means makes it even worse. It can actually increase the delusion, the seeking, the craving, and around we go. So it is essential to practice truly, properly. How do we really do that? Let me take up a simple early Chinese Zen expression. In a sense, it's all there. It is a statement from Mazu, or Baso is his name in Japanese pronunciation, early Chinese Zen master. Very famous, 4 Chinese characters. Way needs no cultivation. To cultivate, like to cultivate the field in a farm, to grow things. The way, the true way of release, of awakening. The way needs no cultivation. The way does not need to be cultivated, practiced. Just don't defile. Defile means to make dirty or to stain or corrupt. Again, a very simple expression. 4 characters, Chinese characters. The way needs no cultivation. Just don't defile. You see how easy it is to misunderstand this expression. Oh, we don't need to do anything. We're okay as we are. And perhaps we try to convince ourselves of that. Meanwhile, we know somewhere, well, not really, huh? And so we remain dissatisfied. Huh? Again, that expression, the way does not need cultivation. Just don't defile. I trust this much is clear. Huh? Actually, when Baso or Matsu said that, he then goes on and explains. He asks the audience, what is defilement? To defile. What is defilement? And then he himself answers, when with the mind of birth and death, one acts in a contrived way, artificially, self-consciously. Again, what is defilement? When with the mind of birth and death, one acts in a contrived way, everything is defilement. So it's important to see he's not simply saying you don't need to do anything. We could perhaps better say he is saying how thoroughly we must do it. So thoroughly that there cannot be one stain, defilement. Consider well what this really means. What does it mean to practice that way? To not give any conscious deliberation, self-conscious intention to cultivate, to make better, to increase more, and yet to not defile or stain it in any way. To be quite blunt, can it really be defiled? I leave that for you. Another expression which I would like to mention, because this is for the German sangha, we have often practiced at the Tannenhof outside of München. And as many of you know, the box where they have the incense and the head monk uses it for his wooden clappers. It has only 3 Chinese characters, even more succinct and precise. 3 Chinese characters that basically says, seeking itself is going astray. Seeking itself astray. Astray means gone wrong, gone off the way. Seeking itself is going astray. Again, easy to misunderstand, isn't it? Okay, so I just stop seeking. I'm now going to try to not seek. Well, you're already seeking, aren't you? It's not quite that simple, or perhaps it's better to say it's even simpler than that. It's not even one. But to truly live that is another thing. So I urge you, don't take these expressions too lightly. Let me put it a little more in contemporary terms. A lot of talk about viruses in this last year. And I'm sure you know that a virus needs a host. A virus cannot continue without a host, someone to give it life in a sense. This is very relevant for Zen practice, isn't it? What is that virus really? And who or what is the host? Consider well. Let me put it another way. Where does the genuine need, the true urge to practice come from? Does that come from self-delusion? Does that come from a self that is split? Where does this genuine urge, this need to practice, to realize, to awaken, where does it come from? I urge you not to waste your time running in self-created circles. The way that Matsu or Baso spoke of, the way needs no cultivation. That way, that true path is inseparable. It cannot be separated from awakening. It is the practice of awakening. It comes from awakening, you can say, and it goes to awakening. I would speak of it as being without self. But beware, that is how thoroughgoing the practice must be. To the point where it cannot be an inch away from awakening itself. That is how thorough, complete it must be. In that sense, practically speaking, I urge all of you, master the techniques of practice. Learn how to use this body to sit in sustained zazen and to carry out that practice in all the activities of your life. Master the technique of proper breath. The breathing is a very valuable way, to just give all of yourself. And of course, the mind, so to speak, the mental attitude. Yes. Master the techniques of focus, of concentration, naturally bringing all to bear right here. Again, these practical techniques are very, very important. We have gone through them over the years in great detail. The body, the practice of the body, the practice of the mind, the practice of the breath. So I will not go into detail here. There are many online videos about that. I want to just stick with the essential point here. Those techniques are precious. Master them, but don't turn them into some kind of a vehicle that you will then get somewhere to. If you really master those techniques, they're not something that you pick up and use. They're much more, and in a sense, much less than that. Don't turn them into something for the self to do. You see? Try to give the self a leg to stand on when it doesn't really have one. All you have to do, hopefully you have already mastered or are now mastering the practical techniques of body, breath, and mind, so that you can continue this practice throughout the day and the night. Then the essential point, simply give all of yourself to that practice. To fully open up, to not escape, to not defile this marvelous practice in any way. To let it be what it truly is. This, what I call being without self. Does it come and go? Does truly being without self come and go? You must confirm this, and it can only be confirmed immediately and directly. The seeking self is coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. That's what's so frustrating, that wavering, unsettled. That's what it is. Being without self does not come and go. It is truly settled without a thing. The seeking self is forever coming and going, running away, or running toward. Yes, confirm it. This is the difficulty of practice. In effect, not truly practicing. Once again, the seeking self, it is coming and going, wavering, unsettled. That is why we cannot truly practice from that standpoint. It isn't a standpoint at all. It doesn't have a leg to stand on. Do you need a leg to stand on? See what you are doing. The self seeks itself. It seeks release from itself. It's inevitable. The self is by its very nature split. We naively think of this self. It's a self. It's one self. I'm not sure what it is or where it is in my head, in my heart, somewhere but it's there, right? Confirm it for yourself. What really is that, The seeking self, by its very nature, it's split. The self is split. It's not one. That's why it tries to put itself back together again. The self is split, and that split is what we call the self. Until you have confirmed that in your bones, in a sense, practice is impossible. You must make this clear for yourself. That split, the self, that split seeks to no avail. It cannot help it, but it cannot succeed either. It seeks to free itself, to what? Gain some enlightenment, some release. And yet its very chasing keeps it going, keeps it dissatisfied. It cannot come fully to rest because it is itself split. It is without a true foundation support. Where are you trying to get to in your practice? Have you seen that? Have you seen where you are truly practicing from? Right there is your trap. It's where you get stuck. And right there is the way through. Make it clear for yourself. There is not a leg to stand on. And we do not need a leg to stand on. It is precisely that which keeps us stuck to ourselves. That, in a sense, is the root of the dis-ease. Once again, make it clear through your own experience. The seeking self is coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. It cannot be settled. Drop it once and for all. You don't need a leg to stand on. I trust you can see from your own experience. The self tries to grasp onto, to hold on to some kind of self-identity, some kind of continuity. Is it really necessary? Do you really need that? If you really see what this is, you would not be chasing after some self-identity, some box to put it in. Isn't that what is dehumanizing, what is depersonalizing? People sometimes get the crazy idea that being free of self, being without self, well, that sounds dehumanizing. We'll be like zombies or something. We won't have any thoughts or feelings. No. It's the self stuck to itself that is dehumanizing, isn't it? That is depersonalizing, isn't it? You don't need a leg to stand on in the first place. Confirm that in your bones. That is the release from all. It is the release for all. And that is the way without need of cultivation. That is the way undefiled, without defiling it. you see how subtle it is to say seeking itself is going astray. The self seeking for something, somewhere, somehow, it's already gone astray, hasn't it? That is itself a symptom of the dis-ease, isn't it? Here is where we begin. Right here is where we begin. It's difficult to talk about. If you try to raise a question about it, it's important to try to make that question as clear and precise as possible. A clear question allows for a clear answer. In a sense, a good part of the practice is that. What exactly is the question, the doubt that must be raised, that must be asked? Right there is 90, maybe 99% of the practice. We can say, oh, this, it's inconceivable. It cannot be conceived. This, the living reality, is beyond conception. It is inconceivable in a very good way. But if the seeking self takes a hold of that, what happens? Oh, okay, now there's all the conceptions, all the things I conceive of, but there's also inconceivable over here, okay? That's not it. It's like saying, oh yes, Joshu's mu, the mu koan, mu. Okay, it's not a thing, it's nothing. So I've got all these ideas and all these things in the world. That's not mu, so we'll put that aside. Now, mu, there's going to be mu, mental masturbation. That is not mu. To say from inside the experience itself, this is inconceivable. What that means is this pen is inconceivable, incomparable, beyond compare. As a pen, yes. It doesn't have to become something else. It doesn't have to become mu. Well, it's here, but it's mu too. No, this is mu. This is you. Until you get there, you will be going around and around in circles. It cannot be helped. That's why the practice must be thoroughgoing. We have an interesting expression again in English. There, but for the grace of God, go I. Some people have traced back to a similar expression found in the Bible, but I believe it became rather popular in the 19th century. Again, the expression there, in other words, looking at someone, for example, who may be unfortunate with illness, someone not as fortunate as you, and the person, a sense of compassion, is saying there, that person, there, but for the grace of God. It's not my doing, it's not me, but through the grace of God, that could be me. You see, it's a nice expression there. But for the grace of God, go I. Do you understand? When looking at someone who is in trouble or unfortunate in some way, well, that's, in a way, it's like me, except thanks to God. Do you think that might need a little interpreting into German, Bernhard, or is it okay?
The grace of, the grace of God ist die Gnade Gottes. Also dort oder der da oder die da, dort wäre ich, wenn ich nicht die Gnade Gottes hätte. So würde ich das jetzt übersetzen.
In Zen, it's quite a bit simpler. In Zen, there goes I. But for the grace of God, it's not necessary. That's me. That's you. There I am. To change the grammar a bit. That's me. There I am. This is genuine practice. Let me end with another statement from Baso or Matsu, this famous Zen master that I mentioned about the way does not need cultivation, just don't defile. One of his most famous exchanges sums up everything I have been saying. Someone who became his great disciple, called the Great Pearl, this monk came and he says, I have come seeking awakening. And Matsu or Baso, the master, says, without realizing your own treasure, you leave home and come seeking here. I don't have a thing. What are you seeking? You see, this monk has come a great distance seeking awakening. And when he finally arrives, the master says, have you forgotten the treasure in your own home, so to speak? You come here seeking it. I don't have a thing. I don't have a thing to give you. What are you seeking? The monk then says, what is my treasure? What is this treasure? And Matsu, the master's response is, you now asking, the one now asking, that is your own treasure. Perfectly complete, it lacks nothing. Use it freely. Why seek it elsewhere? With this, that monk became awakened and became one of the great disciples and successors of Matsu or Baso.